at equatorial vegetation. So we can have our sub-heading here, equatorial vegetation. So when we are looking at equatorial vegetation, we shall look at aspects within equatorial vegetation which we are going to tackle one by one. So we are going to begin by looking at the economic activities or human activities. Human activities within equatorial, that would be one. Another, we shall look at the characteristics of equatorial vegetation. We shall also look at the tree species. The tree species found in equatorial vegetation. We shall also look at the challenges or problems that are faced by people in the equatorial vegetation. From there, we shall look at factors that affect the growth. Factors that affect the growth of equatorial vegetation. Remember, we said equatorial vegetation is the same as equatorial rainforest or tropical rainy forest. So, after looking at factors, we shall also look at the location. Where do we find equatorial vegetation? After looking at the location, then we shall look at animals that live in equatorial rainforest. So animals that live there. I think you have seen. When you see this, you have now known what equatorial vegetation is. So we shall begin by looking at the human activities, and we shall write in a question form. Number 1, state any three human activities. State any three human activities that are done in tropical rainforests. We said tropical rainforest is the same as equatorial rainforests that are done in tropical rainforests. And to take you back, we shall look at our map of Africa to remind ourselves the location. We said is found within the largest part of Central Africa and some parts of West Africa. And part A is our equatorial vegetation we are talking about. So let's begin. I'm coming back to you. We discussed the economic activities or the human activities that are done in the equatorial region. Yes, viewers, tell us one. Yeah, one is saying tourism. Good. Tourism is done everywhere. So when I talk about tourism, yeah, many tourists, foreign tourists, people within Africa visit the tropical rainforests. So another we can talk about hunting. Since equatorial rainforest has very many thick forests, so hunting is also done there. Then the main economic activity done in the equatorial rainforest is lumbering. The main one is lumbering. And lumbering is the cutting down of mature trees for timber. Then tourism is the act of visiting places for leisure and study purpose. So you can go ahead and look at another economic activity which is done in the tropical rainforest. Also have crop growing. Since it receives a lot of rainfall, also have trade, and the trade is the buying and selling of goods. Since there is lumbering, those people, when they cut down mature trees for timber, they sell and get money. There is tourism. It's an invisible trade. So we cannot forget to talk about trade as one of the human activities done in the equatorial rainforest. So I've looked at the first aspect. We can tick that. I've looked at human activities, so we can come to the characteristics of the tropical rainforest. So question 2, mention 5. Mention 5 characteristics. Mention 5 characteristics. Mention 5 characteristics of equatorial vegetation. Of equatorial vegetation. There are very many, there are quite many, but we shall look at the few we can manage, or we can complete them if we want. So 1, characteristics of equatorial vegetation. For those who have ever visited Mabira Forest, the characteristics of Mabira Forest are the ones we want because it's an example of equatorial vegetation. Yes, viewers, tell us 1. I know there are those who are there watching, enjoying our lesson. Tell us 1. Yes, 1 is saying they are sources of hardwood timber. They are sources. They are sources of hardwood. They are sources of hardwood timber. Remember we said since they grow in areas of high temperature, that one makes them to be sources of hardwood timber. We also looked at, when we were beginning our lesson, we looked at some vegetation zones like Mediterranean, which grow in areas of low temperature. They are sources of softwood timber. But now, for equatorial, since it grows in areas of high temperature, they are sources of hardwood timber. And since they also take long to mature, that one makes them to have hardwood timber. That's the first one. So the second one we can talk about, yes, tell us another one is saying they have buttress roots. The trees have buttress. The trees have buttress roots. Those roots that grow on the sides of the tree. So the trees have buttress roots. So we can go ahead and look at the third one. Equatorial vegetation is evergreen. Equatorial vegetation. Equatorial vegetation is evergreen. Evergreen is one word. Is evergreen. And the idea is complete. Equatorial vegetation is evergreen. Why is it evergreen? It receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year. And also, it does not shed leaves at the same time. So that's the reason we can give for being evergreen. Does not shed leaves at the same time. Then receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year. Any other characteristic we can talk about? Yes, viewers, I know there are those who can research and read ahead. They have already carried out research on this. They're equipped already. I'm very happy. Many people in different regions of Uganda are following us. Good. One is saying they are non-deciduous. Or equatorial vegetation is non-what? Deciduous. Equatorial vegetation. Equatorial vegetation is non-deciduous. Equatorial vegetation is non-what? Deciduous. Non-deciduous means it does not shed leaves in a dry season. When you look at the trees in the tropical region, they shed their leaves in a dry season to reduce the rate of transpiration. But here in equatorial, because the area receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year, as a result of having many water bodies, a lot of vegetation, all those ones contribute to receiving a lot of what? Rainfall. So we are saying they are non-deciduous, meaning they do not shed leaves in a dry season. We can also go ahead and look at another characteristic of equatorial vegetation. Yes, tell us another one. One is saying they have broad leaves. Equatorial vegetation, all the trees have broad leaves. Equatorial vegetation. Equatorial vegetation has broad leaves. Equatorial vegetation has broad what? Leaves. When we talk about broad leaves, we mean leaves being wide like this. Broad leaves being wide like you see this nature of leaf. This one. These ones are examples of the leaves we have on equatorial vegetation being broad. Being wide like you can see. So they have broad leaves. You can see. So you can go ahead and look at the last, as per now, the last characteristic of equatorial vegetation. The trees form a canopy. So you can say trees form a canopy. Trees form a canopy. A canopy is an umbrella-like structure found on equatorial vegetation. When you move to Mabira Forest, when you see trees, trees are being, we have bigger trees with smaller trees growing in between them. So this is what we call a canopy, the umbrella-like structure found on trees in equatorial region. The leaves on top, they cover the top part of it, and when you are under, you can't see above. So having looked at characteristics of equatorial vegetation, let us always observe the guidelines from the Ministry of Health. Use sanitizers to sanitize your hands. Wash your hands regularly. So we are finished looking at the characteristics of equatorial vegetation. So we are going to also look at the tree species found in equatorial vegetation. So you can tick what we have finished. We can tick what we have finished as we move through our work. So we finished looking at the characteristics. Now we are going to look at the tree species found in the equatorial vegetation. Now this is number 3. State any 4. We are just giving an example because we already looked at this. State any 4 tree species found in the equatorial vegetation. And we looked at this at the beginning because we have already said they are sources of hardwood timber. So we said equatorial vegetation is a source of hardwood timber. Now having said this, now here about the species, we are going to look at the those tree species that are sources of hardwood timber, and we looked at this. These trees found in the natural forest, we already looked at this in the beginning. We don't want to waste time on this. We have one, muvule. We listed them down already. Mahogany. Ebony. Rosewood, and many more, because we know we already covered this in our beginning part of our lesson when we're looking at types of types of vegetation. We looked at natural vegetation, planted vegetation. We gave examples of planted vegetation and natural. So these ones are some of those we gave as tree species found in equatorial region, and the same ones that provide us with hardwood timber. So we can also come back to our guide. So we are going to look at challenges or problems faced by people in the equatorial vegetation. So we shall also have a question to guide us. This is number 4. Give any 3 problems, or one can say challenges. Give any 3 problems or challenges faced by people okay, faced by people in the equatorial vegetation. We said it's the same as the tropical rain forest. Give any 3 challenges faced by people in the equatorial vegetation. Yes, be prepared. I'm coming back. Yes, viewers, tell us. Yes, Uthman. Good. He's saying insecurity. We have insecurity. As we know, when you take an example of DRC, it has very many rebels. Why? They can hide in the thick forests. So one, we have said insecurity, because of the vegetation being thick, they can hide dangerous people. Another one we can talk about, yes, yeah, one is saying poor transport. That's good. Poor transport is also a problem faced by people who live in the equatorial vegetation. There is a common question I've already seen in exams. Why is road transport difficult in the equatorial region? And we have already said presence of thick forests. The thick forests make road construction difficult. Then the land is also soggy. The land is soggy. When you say land is soggy, it means the water table is near the earth's surface. So I've looked at why there is poor transport in the equatorial region. We have said presence of thick forests. Then the land is soggy, meaning the water table is near the earth's what? Surface. The last problem we can talk about, can also talk about floods, since in the equatorial region there are many water bodies and it receives a lot of rainfall. It receives a lot of rainfall throughout the year. Remember we said places that have a lot of vegetation receive a lot of rainfall. Why? There is a high rate of transpiration. And since in the equatorial region there are also water bodies, many water bodies, it also receives a lot of rainfall as a result of high rate of evaporation. So, can come to number 5. And we have already ticked this, so we are coming to the factors that affect the growth of equatorial vegetation. So we are also going to put it in a question form. Number 5, give any 2 factors. Give any 2 factors that affect, one can say influence, that affect the growth, of tropical rainforests. I'm keeping varying these words to make you understand that tropical rainforests are the same as equatorial rainforests, the same as equatorial vegetation. So, give any 2 factors that affect the growth of tropical rainforests. Yes, I'm coming back to you. Yes, Manje is saying fertile soils. Good. We have fertile soils because in the equatorial region, being that it has a lot of fertile soils, it influences the growth of equatorial vegetation. Lastly, we have good climate, or one can say reliable rainfall. So reliable rainfall. The place receives a lot of rainfall. Excuse me. The place receives a lot of rainfall, and we said it receives a lot of rainfall because of a high rate of transpiration and evaporation. So we are coming almost the last part of our part of natural vegetation, which is equatorial vegetation. So when we talk about location, we shall simply come and look at our map, and we said A is equatorial vegetation. It's found in the largest part of Central Africa and in the coast of West Africa, and that's where we have equatorial vegetation. That's the location of it, and we are taking that part also. So when we talk about animals that are found in equatorial vegetation, we shall simply come and look at those animals that live or live in mountainous, in forested areas, like the monkeys, mountain gorillas, chimpanzees, because they feed on fruits. Animals like monkeys, mountain gorillas, chimpanzees are the common animals that are found in the tropical rainforest because they feed on fruits. So we can also have the last question, which is give any two examples of animals that live in equatorial region. Then we have the activity. Number 6. Mention any three examples. Mention any three examples of animals. Mention any three examples of animals found in tropical rainforests. Found in tropical rainforests. Examples of animals found in tropical rainforests. So we already said we have monkeys. We have monkeys because we said they feed on fruits. We also have chimpanzees. Then lastly, we have the mountain gorillas. These animals, since they feed on fruits, that's why they are commonly found in forested areas. So, last we shall have the question about the location of equatorial region, and this is number 7. Mention any one region. Mention any one region in Africa. Mention any one region in Africa which has equatorial vegetation. Which has equatorial vegetation. So we shall look at the part which has the largest part of it, which is Central Africa. Central Africa. Also talked about West Africa because it's there at the coast. West Africa. In Uganda, we said we have it in areas around the shores of Lake Victoria. Shores of Lake Victoria in Uganda have equatorial vegetation. Why? They receive a lot of rainfall. So, having looked at our topic, our subtopic, which is equatorial vegetation, so let us now come and look at an activity about equatorial vegetation. I'm rubbing this part. Number 1, can have the word activity. Activity. Since we are looking at regions in Africa, we said mention any one region in Africa which has equatorial vegetation. We said Central Africa, West Africa, and we can add East Africa because it's found around the shores of Lake Victoria. East Africa. East Africa. So let us come and look at our activity. Let's come and look at our activity. Question 1. State any one way fertility. State any one way fertility of the soil influences State any one way fertility of the soil influences equatorial vegetation. That's number one. State any one way fertility of the soil influences equatorial vegetation. Number two, we shall say, how does competition for sunlight? How does competition for sunlight affect trees in the equatorial region? How does competition for sunlight affect trees in the equatorial region? Number three, we shall say, mention any one way water bodies help in rain formation. Mention any one way water bodies help in rainy formation. Mention any one way water bodies help in rain formation. Number four, give any one problem faced by people who live. Give any one problem faced by people who live in the equatorial region. Lastly, number five, mention one area in Uganda. Mention one area in Uganda. Mention one area in Uganda with equatorial vegetation. So let us read it through our work. State any one way fertility of the soil influences equatorial vegetation. That's number one. Number two, how does competition for sunlight affect trees in equatorial region? Number three, mention any one way water bodies help in rain formation. Number four, give any one problem faced by people who live in equatorial region. Number five, mention one area in Uganda with equatorial vegetation. And that's our activity. Attempt it. Then you're going to send your answers on the number on the screen. Don't call. The number on the screen. Don't call. Simply record yourself. Take screenshots of your answers. Thank you for being good viewers. Stay tuned. I remain Bavinga Moses. Like the program, Learn at Home, brought to you by Kampala Parent School.